G'day everyone, welcome to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos, in which we are going to be checking out another of the Season 2 heroes. Specifically in this review, we are going to be checking out the 5-star legendary red heroine, Bunraku. There she is, the Puppet Master. So, Bunraku, as is the case with all of these Season 2 or Neon City heroes, they're all available for summons from the Neon City portal, which wraps around once every 4 weeks. Bunraku herself has been in this portal for quite a while now. She was added in September 2022, 10 months after the initial release of the Neon City event in November 21. So this is SGG's ongoing strategy where they keep putting new heroes into existing portals. So that was the case with the Neon City portal. They added a new hero every month that the portal came back around, essentially to keep players resummoning in portals that already exist, so to speak. The portal odds themselves, we can take a quick look at those. So we can see there that the odds come in as a 1% chance for a featured event hero and a 0.6% chance for an unfeatured event hero. So 1.6% odds in total. So what that means though is if you were to do 100 summons in this portal, spending 30,000 gold as the case may be, it would over those 100 summons net you a 63.4% probability of gaining one of the two featured event heroes and a 45.3% probability of gaining one of the unfeatured heroes. If you were drilling down for a specific hero, the odds do drop off quite a bit. So for a specific featured hero in those 100 summons, you have only a 39.4% probability. But for a specific unfeatured hero, there are 25 unfeatured heroes in the portal. You have just a 2.4% probability of gaining that specific hero across 100 summons. So what that means is if 100 players were to do 100 summons in this portal, only 2 of them would get the specific unfeatured hero that they're chasing. So not the greatest odds in the world for an unfeatured hero. Let's just pause real quick and we can track across and take a look at her artwork in a sec. So here we have Bunraku's artwork. So it is one of the animated cards. There are only a couple of these cards that are animated in the game. What they all are, they're heroes that feature in the storyline to some degree. So not going to spoil anything for anyone that's not finished the Season 2 campaign, but Bunraku does feature throughout that campaign narrative as a hero or a character that you encounter fairly regularly. So the artwork itself, it is a bit of a tie back to her namesake. So Bunraku is actually a style of puppetry from Japan that dates way back into like the 15th or 16th century. It's a really old format of puppetry, and an extremely fascinating style of puppetry as well. The heads are extremely intricately carved, and so they're able to be like mechanically manipulated to transform into like different characters. And yeah, it's manipulated by a puppeteer from the back through the back of it. So yeah, it's a very fascinating, very, very old form of puppetry, and that's where Bunraku draws her name from. And also the title of being a puppet master. Although the wording is a little bit off. Bunraku is not the puppet master. That's something different. I'm not going to try and pronounce it because I'm going to absolutely butcher it. But yeah, it's quite interesting to read about if anyone is interested. Wikipedia's got a great article about it. So yeah, it's quite an interesting one. A lot of tiebacks there, obviously, to that sort of feudal or more older Japanese culture with what are we going with? The coat. I was trying to think of the actual name for it, but I'm not going to get it. The dress, rather, is probably a better term for it. There's the fan as well as the parasol or the umbrella, for a poor choice of words there. So it is got a lot of those tiebacks. It does also feature the demon mask as well, which probably, if you're not familiar with the storyline, would give you a couple hints as to her role in that story. But yeah, otherwise, that's the rest of her artwork. Feel free to pause it if you wish, but there she is in all of her glory. So otherwise, I'm going to pause this recording, and it's going to seem like a flash for you, but I'm going to go scroll through the portal to get back to Bunraku. And we're back. So the reason for jumping back across here is we're going to take a little bit of a look at some of the elements of a card. So starting with her family bonus. Now, Bunraku is a member of the Hacker family, which means that she is granted an opportunity to reflect status ailments from enemy special skills back to the caster. So this equates to getting a 15, 20, 25, or 30% chance for that reflect when there are 2, 3, 4, or 5 unique heroes from the hacker family in a battle. They also all gain a charge generation bonus, so a 3, 5, 8, or 13% charge generation boost when you've got the same number of unique heroes again. So notably, they do have to be unique heroes. It can't be 2 copies of Bunraku. It's got to be 2 different heroes, like Bunraku with Pulse or Dr. Scorpion as 2 different examples there. Her personal stats come in at 753 attack, 735 defense, and 1,448 HP. There's not really a great deal of skewing, a little bit going from the HP stat towards the other 2 stats, but nothing really substantial or worth noting in any great detail. The only thing that I will point out is that her her total power there, let me just change that to blue, is actually a little bit reduced. You can see it comes in at 724 as opposed to the most recent Neon City hero, which is Topaz, coming in at 742. So all that means power is a representation of a hero's total base stat distribution. So more power means more base stats. So Bunraku is higher than some of the older heroes. Obviously, she's the 10th one that was added to the portal, but less than some of the more modern heroes that were added to that portal, like Topaz and Amethyst and such. So yeah, it's just a little bit of a relationship. Not a huge detriment, but just something to mention, I guess. Her charge speed is the next item of her skill, so she comes in at 62 speed, which is fast and requires just 9 tiles to charge, or 5 ghosted tiles. The speed break happens at 65, so it's a +3 speed improvement, which you can do using any of the red speed guns in the game. You've got a 4-star gun, which is the Tigger Happy, giving you +7. There's also 2 5-star options, which give +9, so there's the Firewing Trig and the Chekhov SVK. Both of those will give you that +9 speed improvement and get that single break. The double speed break happens at 72 speed, so needs a +10 in speed improvement, which can obviously only be completed when you combine a +9 speed gun with the 4% charge generation node from her class emblem tree at +20. So yeah, the class node is relevant if you do want to get that double break, but it can also get you that single break as well. So the 4% charge generation node can do, I think it's up to about +3 speed improvement at both of these points. So if you've got a +7 gun or +8 or +9, the 4% will charge break to the double, but also the 4% charge generation node will achieve the single break. So yeah, just a situational one. If you don't plan to use a speed gun on her for defense, then it might be worth bushing. Alternatively, if you want to get the double break. But another thing to note as well is that you can get that double break using a +9 speed gun with the family bonus. So if you just use Bunraku with another hacker family member, that will automatically give you the speed break to the double speed break with a +9 gun. So yeah, for me, I didn't go to +20 because that's a lot of emblems, and she does have the charge generation node or equivalent node there from the family bonus, so I typically just run Bunraku with another hacker family member and do the double break that way. I've touched on it a couple times, but Bunraku is a member of the Spy class. So we can see it there, which grants her the chance to scramble the enemy's charge whenever dealing damage to them. So it's a 10% charge reduction whenever they deal damage. It's probably one of my favorite class perks, up there with the Demolitions class, because it's effectively free charge control. And that charge control can be resultant from any form of damage. It can be tiles, skills, slash attacks, minions, anything like that. They can all trigger that 10% scramble, essentially. It's also really great because in my experience, it can be the difference between winning a fight and losing it. Basically just disrupting the enemy's charge just enough to slow them down and stop them from hurting me as badly. So generally speaking, I do recommend putting at least +1 on all of your leveled Spy class heroes just to activate that chance for charge cut. By way of an actual emblem path, you can see here on Bunraku, I have gone an attack path. At each of the nodes, I've selected the side that's got an attack node. As a secondary priority, I went defense over HP. That's just my personal preference. It's a bit of a dealer's choice. You can kind of choose whichever way you want to go. But for me, you can see I've picked up defense when there's a choice between defense and HP on either side. So yeah, picking up every attack node, and then defense is the secondary priority. I did stop at plus 18. The plus 19 node is an attack bonus, so you can pick that up and gain some bonus attack points. I didn't because I still think that I've got other uses for those spy class emblems, which is why I've not given that 125 extras, but it is very justifiable as well. And as I mentioned, the plus 20 is situationally beneficial, so you'll have to weigh that up yourself if it's worth grabbing 20 or not. So yeah, that's the path I followed. So yeah, we will move on, and I'm going to jump back across to the portal real quick. Hopefully not have to scroll too far. We're scrolling away. The last time I paused is I was literally right there at the start of the portal, but this time she's a ways down. So her special skill is the next thing we'll take a look at. So her skill is called the Dance of 100 Blades, and at level 10 skill and 62 charge speed, it will do something that's quite confusing, but we'll break it down and analyze it nonetheless. So on the first cast, it will deal 265% damage to the target and nearby enemies, and then apply a plus 38% crit buff, a plus 180 attack buff, and a plus 28% charge generation buff to herself for 3 turns. The last of those cannot be cleared. On her second cast, sorry, I didn't scroll down there. On her second cast, she's going to do effectively all the same things, but do it for herself and nearby allies. So still dealing 265% damage to the target and nearby enemies, but then we'll do the plus 38% crit buff, the plus 180 attack buff, and the plus 28% charge generation buff to herself and nearby allies for 3 turns. And again, the charge generation effect cannot be cleared. And finally, on the third and all subsequent casts, she will do the same thing, but for all allies. So deals 265% damage to the target and nearby enemies, followed by a 38% crit buff, a plus 180 attack buff, a plus 28% charge generation buff to all allies for 3 turns. And again, the charge generation one cannot be cleared. So it is a fairly, I'm going to say it's a fairly confusing skill to wrap your head around. It's not wholly unique to Bunraku. There are a couple other heroes that do this progressive skill. Namely, there's two in Season 2. One is called Mantis, and another is Crash. Both of those heroes will also progress through first cast, second cast, third, and subsequent casts. So we'll break it apart and we'll have a look at it at each of those elements. I'm not going to look at each dot point for each skill. I'm just going to look at the main heading. So we'll look at damage, crit chance, attack buff, and then charge generation, because all that's then changing is the range, essentially. So yeah, for the start off, we're going to have a look at the damage aspect. So damage is always, it's relatively easy to calculate, but it does have a lot of variability to it, or randomness. So for simplicity's sake, I basically compare heroes based on their attack power, which is their attack stat multiplied by the percentage in their skill. It is analogous to the final damage calc, but just removes that variability. So in the case of Bunraku, we can see that she comes out with an attack power of 1,996, but an attack power per tile of 222. So even though her damage isn't the greatest, just 265%, and her attack isn't hugely skewed towards the attack, because of her hefty speed, she actually maintains quite a high damage output when you normalize it for that speed. So you can see that she does come in there at number 2 of the 11 DOA 3 red hitters in the game. The only one that's higher is Magma, who has a very hefty attack stat and a very high percentage in his skill, and comes out with 225. So not very much at all above Bunraku in the slightest. There's a lot of other ones on there. You can see ones like Variant Zidane comes in at 183, Accent 167, the double up in the middle of the pack with Brocken and Dapper Santa coming in at 166, and so forth down that list there. So if we were to expand this list out to all of the possible options of all the DOA 3 hitters and 5-star across all elements, she does come in as number 11 of the 57 options in the game. So still maintains quite a good positioning. She's in that top 20% of DOA 3 hitters, but is a fair step behind some of the best ones. So the best 3 hitters, DOA 3 hitters in the game are in the 290s in terms of their attack power per tile. So you've got Spite, Fungi Beats, and Whack. Those guys are all doing 290 plus APPT. So red is a little bit of a step behind those ones. You can see Magma's the best at 225 compared to 290. But in saying that as well, as I said, does maintain the top 20% tile as Bunraku is there. I will just touch on really briefly while we're on this screen for comparison. When you throw in that attack buff for Bunraku, so the plus 180 attack buff, her attack power per tile does jump a little bit. So instead of it being a 753 attack, it goes to 933 is what it bumps up to, which then turns her attack power into 2472, and her attack power per tile jumps up to 274. So it does close the gap substantially towards some of those best options in red. But unfortunately, it's not percentage based, but we'll get to all of that later. The next part of her skill that we will look at, though, is the crit chance. So this is reflected in all 3 casts, but basically it reads that the caster / nearby allies / all allies will gain plus 38% crit chance for 3 turns. So crit is a really interesting effect in the game. It's probably one of the most powerful damage increasing effects that exists in the game. So to kind of really briefly explain how crit works is that essentially, crit chance affects the likelihood that normal damage will deal critical damage. All heroes start off with a base crit chance of 0%. It then goes up incrementally from that when you start introducing emblems, weapon bonuses, and buffs. Crit damage itself is calculated as being 2 times the base damage that is, the base normal damage done. So a tile that would normally do 100 damage is now going to do 200. It doubles it. So a couple things that I do need to highlight to really explain crit is as follows. So number 1, only normal damage, or what's classed in the game as normal damage, can crit. So this is a fairly tight list. So it includes tiles, slash attacks, and minion strikes. That's it. Those are the only forms of damage in the game that are classed as quote-unquote normal damage. Special skills are not normal damage, they're skill damage, so they cannot crit. And the exception to that is Mortis, who specifically says that his skill can crit, but it's treated separately. So if that confuses you, check out the Mortis review video, it goes into that a lot more detail. But skills themselves cannot crit. So Bunraku will never crit damage off her special skill. The other thing that I need to highlight is that crit damage is calculated off the pre-elemental modifiers base damage. So essentially what happens is it runs the damage calculation for a normal damage or a tile, and it spits out a number. It then does 2 checks simultaneously. Number 1 is it checks the elemental damage. So it goes, is this a strong, neutral, or a weak tile? But the second thing that it checks at the same time is whether it is a crit chance, like it's a crit tile or not. So it then will take that base number and then do the elemental modifier and the crit modifier, bring them back together, and then add them together at the very end. So to sort of illustrate how this works, if we take that tile I was talking about before and it does 100 damage, that's a base tile. A neutral tile will remain at 100 damage, right? Because there's no elemental modifier. When we do the crit damage, it comes out as being 200, right? Because we take the base amount, 100, and then we add another 100 to it, so it comes out as 200 damage. A weak tile, so we take our base 100 damage, we set that off to the side, right? It will then, the weak element will then make it do 50 off the base amount, but then the crit comes in and it puts the base 100 onto it as well. So it comes out as being 150 damage, all right? So it goes from 100 down to 50 and then up to 150 when you add the crit back in. A strong tile, on the other hand, strong tiles will double the damage. So we take our 100, we increase it to 200, and then we bring our crit back across and we add it on as well. So it goes up to 300 damage. Are you confused yet? Excellent, because that's how crit works in this game. The long and the short of it is that neutral tiles will get a 100% damage increase. It'll go from 100 up to 200. Weak tiles will get a 300% damage increase because they go from 50 and it adds on the crit which hasn't been modified by the elemental. So it'll go from 50 up to 150 damage. So that's 300%. A strong tile though will only get a 50% increase because it's already doubled and you're adding half again on as well. So it goes from 200 up to 300. So the really, really short and the basic TLDR, and this is all too confusing and I don't understand it, Gov, I don't give a shit, or whatever it might be, is that crit has a massive impact on the game. Crit tiles are always, always, always good. It has the biggest impact on weak tiles because you're basically removing some of that elemental modifier and adding more damage on. But strong tiles that crit have the highest tile damage that you can get. All right. So crit is always going to be good. It's always going to be beneficial, and it will always apply, to the pre-damage number that's calculated. And then it just runs and spits out the final number. So yeah, crit, really, really great. Very, very strong, extremely confusing. But the very short version of it is that crit is always going to be a good thing. And if you can bring crit into your battles without sacrificing another effect, then it is worth doing, is the long and the short of it. So moving on from the crit, because it is confusing and I could talk about it for quite a long time and still not have explained it in any better way. Someday I will make a crit explained video, but I just haven't got to it yet. So the next part of our skill is the attack buff. So again, it reads the same on all three casts. So it says either that the caster nearby, or all allies get plus 180 attack for 3 turns. So right off the bat, we can see that it's a static buff. All right. It's not a percentage-based one, which means it's not going to scale with emblems, power creep, weapons, or anything like that. It is always going to be fixed at 180. 180 in 3 turns is fairly standard for a static buff. It's the same as a lot of the other heroes that do this effect. There's some that are 144, some that are 180. It's kind of around about that region. So nothing too stand out-ish from that, other than the fact that it changes who the range is. If we were to take that 180 and we were to convert it to a percentage-based effect, using some different, totals, if we use just Bunraku's base damage, or base attack, so 180 of 753 is a 23% improvement, so it would be a 23% buff on her base stats. If she had her stats plus a random standard 5-star weapon that gives about 200 attack, it drops down to just being an 18% buff of her attack. And you will also remember that I did mention that her attack and her power are a bit reduced compared to some of the newer heroes. So if we were to look at some of those most recent heroes that are added to the game, that percentage goes from 18% and it drops off even further. So it's a bit difficult to really sing huge amounts of praises for a static attack buff when you consider heroes that don't have this as a static, ones like, Clara, they're popping out like 42% attack buff or higher, up to like 121% attack buff, whereas Bunraku's stuck at like 20% or lower depending on who the hero is and what weapons are equipped to that hero. So yeah, again, it's not, it is very much a down for Bunraku, but it is a attack buff at the end of the day. So it does still give improved damage, but with the existence of percentage-based buffs, it does very much, very, very, very much reduce the, shininess or the effectiveness, that's probably the best word for it, the effectiveness of attack buffs that are static, and same with defense buffs and all of that sort of thing as well. Moving on to the final part of our skill, which is the charge generation effect. So again, the caster / nearby ally / all allies will gain a plus 28% charge generation improvement for 3 turns. And this final effect cannot be cleared. So charge generation is awesome. It's a very, very, very awesome buff. It affects all forms of charge that are coming onto the affected heroes. It can be charged from tiles, charged from special skills such as Zigzag, charged from minions like Pulse and Booster, charged from buffs like Senya, and so on. If it grants the hero charge, it is affected by this charge generation bonus. So like with the crit buff, to really explain how awesome this buff is, I do have to get a little bit technical, so again, either bear with me or just skip forward a bit to a couple minutes time when I get past all of the mathy bit, but essentially how this buff works is it affects the charge that she and all affected allies gains. Alright, so instead of gaining 1 charge unit of charge from a tile, with this buff they gain 1.28. It puts a 28% multiplier onto the charge that they gain. So a hero's charge speed sets how many charge units are required to get their skill to 100%. So for a slow hero who has speed 36, they need 11.96 charge units or 12 complete tiles to get to 100%. With the 28% charge generation buff, 10 tiles will generate 12.8 charge units. So just with this 28% bonus, it will effectively double break a slow hero going from 12 tiles down to 10 tiles. For a fast hero, as a different example, such as Bunraku with 62 speed, she needs 8.32 charge units or 9 complete tiles. So under the buff, again, 7 tiles will generate 8.96 charge units, which is greater than the 8.32 required. So again, it receives a double break. So once again, Bunraku goes from 9 tiles to charge down to 7 tiles to charge just with this buff alone. If we take it a step further and look at Bunraku equipped with a +9 speed gun, she goes up to speed 71, which requires 7.06 charge units or 8 complete tiles. So once again, the speed buff will drop her down to needing just 6 tiles to charge, which is effectively a triple break from her original 9 tiles to charge requirement, right? So Bunraku with this bonus and the +9 speed gun goes from being a 9 tile to charge hero down to a 6 tiles to charge hero, which means that when you've got a +9 speed gun with the 28% charge generation buff active on her, all you need to do to recharge her is make a match 3 and ghost all 3 tiles. 6 tiles, boom, done. So the two mathy didn't really listen, couldn't really focus, is essentially this. With the speed buff active, you will achieve a 2 to 3 tile speed break with just that buff only, not factoring in any other things like weapons and charge generation nodes or anything like that. It is just that buff. So it is an extremely powerful effect and can be used to huge effect in things like charge attack tournaments, because you can effectively break any hero that you've got a +9 speed gun on down to needing just 6 tiles to charge, which is insane. So really key effect to be using in the game if you can, essentially. So overall for Bunraku, she is a very useful, a very versatile, and a very powerful hero in my personal opinion. She's not entirely unique in terms of the skill progressing through different stages, although Bunraku is very unique in the combination of buffs that she gives off. In fact, I think she is the only hero that generates 3 buffs for all allies. I don't think there's another hero that does it. I could be wrong on that, I'm just speaking off the top of my head. But she does give off a lot of buffs, but not only are they buffs, but they are actually very useful buffs, like crit chance and charge generation are some of the best buffs that you can actually generate for your team. Factoring that in, it gives her so much potential to use her in war and raid attacks, defense teams, war machines, events, and all of that sort of thing. And just to top it all off, even without the buffs, her damage component is both consistent and reasonably hefty in terms of the comparison to other DOA3 hitters in the game. So for Bunraku's grading, I am going to give her an A grade for war and raid attacks. The combination of charge bonus with crit, with her damage output and her speed does make her a very useful hero into general attack teams. Similarly for the war machine, I'm going to keep her at an A grade. Majority of damage against war machines comes from tiles. So the fact that her effect gives you crit damage as well as an attack bonus is actually very useful. Admittedly, you can get a better attack buff if you just use battle items, but this means that it's free, essentially. But crit damage, or increasing the crit chance to do crit damage on some of the other like tiles that are hitting the war machine, is also very powerful and can dramatically improve your war machine damage output. For the eventing, I'm going to drop it down to an A-. It is a slight drop. in that grading. DOA 3 hitters are the best alternative to multi-hitters for those events, and she is a pretty good option in that regard, so keeping an A- there. In the defense side of things, I'm going to give her a B+ for general defense teams, so for wars and raid defenses. She's a good hero. She's got good speed. She's got good damage, which does mean that she can fit into those teams fairly easily. I'd say her best spot is in the flank position, so position 2 or position 4. But because of that speed and damage, I think she can be used quite effectively in the tank position as well as an alternative to someone like Pulse if your team is running with red tanks. In our 3 tournaments, so we've got Bloody Battle, where healing and armor and all of that is negated. So I'm going to give her an A- for Bloody Battle attack and a B+ for Bloody Battle defense. Pretty good hero, good option to use there as well. In the buff booster side of things, I'm going to give her an A+ for attack and an A grade for defense. As I said, only hero that I'm aware of off the top of my head that can generate 3 buffs to all allies, which results in a 15 total buffs, which is 20% attack, so 300% attack across your entire team, which is very hefty and well worth doing, and is also easily layerable with other big buff generating heroes, such as Xenia, because she doesn't actually overlap with any of Xenia's buffs, so that's 5 buffs for all allies. Anyway, A+ for buff booster attack, A grade for buff booster defense. And finally, in the charge tournament, she does get a slight speed improvement. She goes from 62 up to 65. It doesn't really change much because, again, she's still got those really key charge attack tournament bonuses, such as the charge generation bonus, as well as the crit and the attack and stuff. And her damage is still reasonably good. So I'm going to keep her at an A grade for attack in charge tournaments and a B+ for charge tournament defense. So overall, that comes out as being an A grade for her overall attack and a B+ for her overall defense grade. Although, you could argue that it could be a bit higher than that, but yeah. That concludes the content for this review of Bunraku. So as always, these are just my personal thoughts and opinions on these heroes. I do value your thoughts and feedback on them, so please, if you do have some thoughts on them, do jump down to the comments section and leave me a note. I try to read and respond as much as possible. If you did find the video and its contents to be good, useful, helpful and everything, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel and all of that, but definitely also share the video around, because chances are, if this sort of thing is useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to other people you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me. I do hope I will see you again soon, but until then, good luck, stay safe and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!